I'm Alfonso Winker.
And I'm Trina Olson. And together, we're the co-founders of Team Dynamics.
And this is Behave.
Hey, Alfonso, I don't know if we're going to end up having like a name for these kind of episodes, but you and I are like starting a wondering or a musing or a conversation. And I think we're going to have it for a while. And I think we feel like we could let our listeners in early while we're still in mid-wondering before we necessarily have a recommendation. Are you down with doing a little public conversating with our behaviors?
Yes, I love an active communal wonder.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So, I have been attempting in the last many months the practice of morning pages, which is just write 3 long-handed, meaning non-computer pages. My digits allow me to write longhand, so that's what I do. And we were in a meeting and you just shared wondering and noticing, because a lot of what's going on in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racist space right now is about metrics, right? Like, what are we measuring and what are indicators of success? And just yesterday, true story, right? We were on the telephone. So you were in my earbuds. I was like grumbling through my mask, standing at the pharmacy, getting my prescriptions, because we were talking about how news was going around about the newest CEO of Walgreens being a Black woman. And it's currently, as we record this episode, that will mean there is a singular one Black woman out of 500 of the Fortune 500 leaders, right? And so there's a lot of measurement of diversity for sure, just meaning mix. But we've also been hearing people having wonderings about whether it's employee satisfaction or it's evaluations of programs or projects that people like or don't like or find popular or unpopular. It's event attendance, whether it's online or it's in person when that was possible. So a lot of people are trying to figure out what to measure when they're thinking about, are we making progress? And how will we know if we're getting any closer to living our values in the workplace around justice, around equity, around inclusion? And in particular, I wanted to zoom in on the wondering you posited to me, which was, what kind of trouble do we accidentally get ourselves in when we are deciding that employee satisfaction with diversity, equity, and inclusion or anti-racist initiatives is a good indicator that we're on the right track? What were you wondering about?
Yeah, so satisfaction is an interesting measurement. And I think I've heard from clients across various industries that we want everybody to like this training or enjoy their coaching. And whenever I think about my own personal growth, I have not been particularly satisfied with singular events or happy with the hard work it took to change. So I was just telling the story to a client earlier today. A few months ago, my roommate and I decided to make the investment in a Peloton bike. The first time I went to use the Peloton was so frustrating because I had to like adjust the seat and the handlebars and figure out like, what are these classes? And these are like new shoes and they're kind of stiff, right? And I knew the thing I was about to do was good for me. I knew that like I enjoy cycling. I enjoy sort of resetting or starting my day with some kind of like movement. I know I'm like smarter and more creative when I move at some point during the day. I was almost completely unsatisfied with my first Peloton ride. It was hard. I didn't know what I was doing. I had to learn a new like set of systems and tools. And I had nothing to show for it other than being able to say, well, I started that journey.
Right.
Right. And so I'm thinking a lot about organizations, companies, businesses that are choosing to measure satisfaction as sort of the bar for, are we doing our equity and inclusion work correctly? Yeah, and I would say if satisfaction is the rubric, I don't know that we're in pursuit of transformation.
Ooh, say more about that.
So it's not that I want people to be miserable. And it's not that I want people to leave every engagement, event, speaker, training, workshop confused or bewildered or lost or unsupported. But I think if the majority of organizations were constructed to maintain white and masculine dominance, then at least for a portion of an organization's culture change journey toward more equity and inclusion, there will be some discomfort. And folks may not be satisfied because they may, if they've been promised organizational transformation as a person of color, as a woman, as a queer person, as a trans person, they might be saying, well, this isn't going fast enough because I have a lifetime of being held back, pushed down by systems of white and masculine dominance. And if I'm someone that benefits from white and masculine dominance, I might be feeling a little itchy or disconcerted because I might have a hunch or may have just been told some of the behaviors we engage in that really work for me may have to shift. So I don't know who's leaving those first moments feeling satisfied.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I think part of why you and I are feeling excited about this conversation or this wondering is the release from the false binary that there's satisfied and unsatisfied, or that it always matters or it never matters. Right. So that like there's a squishy, there's a middle, there's something new emerging. And so the way I think about that, right, is the dissatisfaction of people of color, people with disabilities, people for whom English is not their first language, people who have a different religious tradition than Christian, right? It's like, okay, we talk a lot about spreading the discomfort around and who's sort of bearing the responsibility to shift and change. What's the distinction and difference between asking people to assimilate versus adapting to sort of an equitable multiplicity of ways of getting the work done? And so I think what is interesting, right? And at the risk of being trite, hard work feels hard.
Right.
And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't mean brutal and it doesn't mean horrifying and it doesn't mean only bad, right? It is often that in a day or even in a meeting, I experience high highs and low lows because there's something so cool that I just learned. And I also got like really disappointed by something somebody said. Or, as a white woman, whenever somebody brings something to my attention that I had literally missed up until being today years old, I get embarrassed, right? Or I get defensive, or I get like mad at my elementary school teachers for not teaching me right. Like I get a lot of places, but there are things that if I am willing to go deeper and learn, and if I am imagining a future where our work relationships get to be as rigorous and complex as the rest of our life relationships, right? It's like when we're just doing surface level stuff, we're all skating around. And so, sure, we're like mostly satisfied enough, but we absolutely know writ large that especially American workers are self-reporting that they're underperforming, right? It's not managers saying workers aren't trying hard or like nobody's doing a good job. It's workers saying, yeah, the environment in which I'm working, sort of the container I'm set up in, the way management works, the way my projects are designed, I'm just not bringing my full thunder. And it's not because I'm holding back or being petulant. It's like, I don't have the room or the freedom to bring everything of what I have to offer. And so I think what can be really dangerous, and I think the linkage for me as a woman from satisfaction gets really like kissing cousins to likability, which, we know from whether it's like picked for dodgeball team days in fourth grade, or it's being asked to a dance, or it's being picked on a project team. We know that one of the primary ways that the bias in our brain shows up around race and gender is preferences and liking certain kinds of bodies, certain kinds of people, certain kinds of behavior, certain tonality and style. We're actually like conditioned to appreciate certain behavior more than other. We're conditioned to be afraid of certain behaviors over others, right? And so this idea that satisfaction means people thinking that I feel like fully satisfied, like a customer at a restaurant. Like I loved the experience of figuring out where to put my coat and park. I enjoyed the amuse-bouche. I loved the menu. Really, you can tell I just haven't been to a restaurant in over a year. So I'm like, yeah, oh my God, a restaurant. Um, but thinking about like the bathroom was clean and smelled nice and had cool music. Oh, the dessert menu, like the conversation, the wine glasses, whatever it is, there's always this holistic aspect, right? And what we know to be true around negativity bias is that people mostly remember the one part they didn't like, right?
Right.
I liked like 75% of my experience. And then that 4 minutes out of 4 hours pissed me off.
Right.
Right. And so it's tricky.
And I'm thinking about, as you talk about preference, as you talk about likability, I'm thinking about some research that you and I have read that feedback is primarily our bias telling the person we're giving feedback to or group we're giving feedback to, well, I would have done it like this.
Sure.
And then we run the risk. So we combine, so feedback is, I would have done it like this. We add race and gender bias to it, which means the way I would have done it would have exacerbated or reinforced or maintained comfort and preference for whiteness and masculinity. And then also, the people we're asking if they were satisfied or not are non-experts. So yes, we are all experts in our own experience, in our lived experience. Yes, we are experts in our jobs or whatever it is we create or make or produce. But when as equity and inclusion justice practitioners, we go to non-experts to ask them if they're satisfied, I would imagine the answer will usually be no, right?
Right.
No, we're not satisfied because I would have done it differently. And the way I would have done it would be more like how we've always done things, which is a way that we do to keep whiteness and masculinity maintained and comfort and dominating. And so my curiosity is genuinely then, if the mindset of most organizations is to maintain comfort, how do we set reasonable metrics? Because do we reinforce, right? This is sort of not usual for me to feel so open-ended, but in this moment when folks are pushing to quantify and measure, the only thing I know how to do is sort of say, like, are you hiring and paying women, people of color, and trans people more and better? Do your women, people of color, and trans people report having an experience where their ability to freely lead and express themselves isn't being regularly punished, right? Like, I don't know, did everybody like the workshop? Like, I don't know if that's a good thing to be measuring.
Right. Well, and it's so interesting, right? Because there is this zeitgeist we're in about happiness and wellness and well-being. And I'm for all of those things, right? I would like to be primarily happy, well, and healthy. But we actually know that all of those experiences are temporary. And so it is where we run into this huge disappointment when our expectation is this will only feel good, or I promise you this will feel good. And when I think about the like cost benefit analysis, I guess the way I come at it from a little bit of a reverse engineered perspective is, I don't know, how mad are you about the abysmal health outcomes for people of color in this country? How furious are you that women are getting treated like crap, right? How worried are you that your transgender and gender nonconforming kids and neighbors and your kids' friends may not be as safe as your cisgendered kids, right? It's like, because we're operating from a problem that needs to be fixed. We're not starting at neutral, right? And so I think in that way, whether you feel like you've got kind of fight energy or you just think, okay, transformation is really different than just little tiny adjustments. What we know is that the problems are so enormous, the gaps are so big, and they've lasted for so long. I was saying to a client yesterday, it's like these inequities have become part of the furniture. They're just in the background, and we don't even notice because they're the norm, and they've been the norm for our parents and for our grandparents and for our great grandparents. So it's like, that's just how it is. Women just don't get paid equally, right? Or like people of color just don't get access to job opportunities. Like, too bad, so sad, right? And like, what? So part of it is the house has been on fire for so long, it just feels warm. It doesn't feel like it's on fire. And for people who are living day to day and are radically unsatisfied with super inequitable workforces. It's like, well, who cared about their satisfaction? And so I do think this isn't for me about white saviorism, and it isn't about one size fits all. I think an interesting conversation about the framework of satisfaction is it can get us back into a one right or best mindset rather than an equity mindset, right? So I think about it like the Monday morning quarterbacking is I would have done it this way. Okay, sure. And did you still get the point? Right? So it's like your favorite color is orange, Alfonso. Mine is blue. We've decided to make our book cover orange and our company color is blue. Are we both still alive? Cool. I do, we did it my way one time, your way the other time. And it's like, okay, I would have done it a different way. And it still had the impact. So part of what we're doing sometimes is unfortunately measuring or distracting ourselves on the style over the substance. So we talk a lot about when we are stripped back to our essence, we know what is wrong, we know what is right, and that's what can give us the courage to take action, even if it's really countercultural. And sometimes something new feels exciting, and sometimes something new feels like everything's on the line. So I think whether it's like likability, satisfaction, measurement, who's happy, who's uncomfortable, I think this is just an interesting thing to sort of stay dug into because we know language is on the move, we know it matters, and we know that we don't want to accidentally support anyone lulling themselves into the incorrect belief that we're not making progress or we are based on what's truly happening in terms of those tangible changes you were mentioning, which are absolutely measurable when it comes to closing the gaps of inequity.
So we're posing a question. Give us a tweet at Behave Podcast. When you think about metrics and satisfaction in your organizational equity and inclusion initiatives, what's coming up for you? Thanks for spending time with us today. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and make good choices.